Remove the Duchess's keys and search her rooms. Duke Julian Ashcombe's command struck the county guildhall with the force of a gunshot. Beatrice stood beneath 3 crystal chandeliers, while more than 100 landowners, merchants, clergymen, and tenant representatives turned to stare at her. At the far end of the chamber, rain tapped against the tall windows. Inside, no one moved except Constable Harrow, who approached with one hand extended. "Your keys, Your Grace." Beatrice looked past him to her husband. Julian stood behind the magistrate's table in a black morning coat, his ducal signet gleaming on his right hand. His expression was controlled, almost cold enough to disguise what he had chosen to do. Beside him rested the blue leather ledger Beatrice had used to record every payment made from the Winter Relief Fund. That book belonged in her locked office. "You entered my rooms without my consent," she said. "I entered rooms inside my own house. They were granted to me under our marriage settlement. This hearing concerns £12,000 stolen from families who may not survive the winter." Julian's jaw tightened. "Do not hide behind legal language." A murmur moved through the gallery. Beatrice felt the accusations settle over her like filthy water. For 7 years she had managed the Ashcombe accounts. During the failed harvest of 1813, she had negotiated credit when 3 banks refused Julian. The following year, she had sold her mother's sapphires to buy seed grain. No tenant child had starved while she controlled the relief fund. Now Julian had summoned the entire county to watch him call her a thief. Constable Harrow reached for the silver keyring at her waist. When Beatrice did not release it, his fingers hesitated. "Do it," Julian ordered. The constable cut the silk loop from her belt. The small sound of tearing fabric drew more attention than a scream might have done. The keys fell into his palm. Her office, the granaries, the tenant ledgers, the medicine store, and the strong room. Every responsibility she had carried was removed in a single gesture. Lord Marcus Vale watched from Julian's right side. He was Julian's cousin, though the resemblance between them ended at height and coloring. Where Julian's restraint made him difficult to read, Marcus displayed every emotion he wished others to see. At that moment, his handsome face held a carefully measured expression of sorrow. Beatrice had seen the same expression when he lost £8,000 in a shipping speculation and asked her to conceal it from Julian. She had refused. Julian lifted the blue ledger. 3 transfers were authorized using the Duchess's signature. The money was supposedly paid to grain suppliers in Hull. Those suppliers do not exist. Then the signatures were forged. You were the only person besides me permitted to authorize those payments, and I did not authorize them. Marcus lowered his eyes, as though embarrassed on her behalf. Julian opened the ledger and turned it toward the magistrates. "Your handwriting appears on every page." Beatrice stepped closer, despite the constable's attempt to block her. The figures were neat, the letters almost indistinguishable from her own. Whoever had copied them knew that she crossed her sevens and formed the tail of every capital R with a slight upward stroke. But the spacing was wrong. Beatrice never crowded pounds and shillings together. Her father, a country solicitor, had taught her that cramped figures created opportunities for alteration. In the forged entries, the numbers nearly touched. "Allow me to examine the paper," she said. Julian closed the ledger. "No," one word. Calmly spoken, it wounded her more deeply than his accusation. 6 weeks earlier, she had warned him that the relief accounts contained irregularities. She had asked for 2 days to trace them. Julian had accused her of manufacturing difficulties because she resented Marcus's growing influence over the estate. He could have listened then. He could still listen now. Instead, Julian gestured toward the clerk at the end of the table. The young man lifted a square wooden box and placed it before the magistrates. "We found this behind a false panel in Her Grace's dressing room," Julian announced. The lid opened. Inside lay bundles of banknotes, 2 sealed letters, and a velvet pouch heavy with gold sovereigns. A collective breath passed through the room. Reverend Cole, who distributed food in the northern villages, stared at Beatrice with naked disbelief. "That money was meant for the poor," he whispered. "I have never seen that box." Julian's gaze did not leave her face. "The panel was behind your wardrobe." "Discovered by whom?" Marcus answered. "One of your own maids." Beatrice turned toward the servants gathered near the rear doors. Her personal maid, Clara Finch was not among them. "Where is Clara?" No one replied. "Bring her here," Beatrice said. Julian's fingers tightened around the ledger. She fled Ashcombe Hall before dawn. How convenient. She fled because she feared what you might do when you learned she had spoken. Marcus stepped forward. "Cousin, perhaps this need not become more painful than it already is. Beatrice may have believed she could repay the fund before winter." Beatrice faced him. "Do not offer me a kinder motive for a crime you know I did not commit." For one instant, the sympathy vanished from Marcus's eyes. Then the mask returned. A magistrate broke the seal on one of the letters. "This instructs a London broker to transfer the funds to an account under the name B. Harcourt." "Harcourt was my mother's family name," Beatrice said, "a fact known to everyone in this room, and used by you before your marriage," Julian replied. The ease with which he supplied another stone for her grave made something inside her grow still. This was no momentary anger. Julian had collected evidence, summoned witnesses, and arranged a public hearing. He had decided she was guilty long before allowing her to speak. "What happens now?" Beatrice asked. Julian seemed almost surprised by her calmness. "Until the magistrates complete their investigation, you will surrender control of the estate accounts. You will not enter the treasury, granaries, or administrative offices." "And who will replace me?" Silence answered first. Then Julian looked toward Marcus. "The betrayal became complete. My cousin will oversee the relief fund." Several tenant representatives exchanged uneasy glances. They knew Marcus as a charming host and enthusiastic sportsman. They did not know that he could not reconcile a household account without borrowing money from the next quarter. Beatrice did. "You are giving £12,000 in remaining reserves to a man whose creditors visited this estate twice last year." Marcus flushed. "That is a contemptible lie. I recorded the payments myself." "And now we know what your records are worth," Julian said. The words landed harder than the accusation. A clerk carried the seized letters past Beatrice. One envelope had been sealed with blue wax bearing the Ashcombe lion. She noticed a dull sheen around its edge and caught a faint, unmistakable scent. Cloves. 3 years earlier, the estate had stopped adding clove oil to its sealing wax because the mixture became brittle during winter. Beatrice had personally ordered the remaining blocks moved to the old supply room. Marcus had taken possession of that room 6 months ago. Her pulse quickened, but she kept her eyes lowered. She needed the letter preserved. She needed witnesses. Most of all, she needed Julian to believe she had been defeated. A church bell began ringing beyond the Guildhall. Once, twice, then again, faster, the alarm used for fire, riot, or imminent danger. The doors burst open, and a mud-covered farm boy stumbled into the chamber. "The Northern Relief wagon overturned near Millstone Bridge," he gasped. The sack split open. Reverend Cole rose. "How much grain was lost?" The boy's frightened eyes found Beatrice. "There wasn't any grain, sir." The sacks were filled with gravel. Angry voices erupted outside. Through the rain-streaked windows, Beatrice saw dozens of tenants advancing toward the Guildhall. The boy seized the edge of the magistrate's table. "They say the Duchess stole their food," he whispered, "and they're coming to take it back." "Was Magistrate Wycliffe harmed?" Beatrice asked. "His driver was struck," Reverend Cole replied. "Wycliffe escaped with a broken wrist. The attackers took only the evidence chest. The forged ledger, the planted money, and the clove-scented letter had vanished together." Marcus gave a bitter laugh. "How fortunate for Beatrice." How? Julian turned on him. "My wife was under guard when the carriage was attacked. She has servants throughout the county. And you have warehouses, secretaries, and unpaid creditors," Beatrice said. Marcus stepped toward her, but Julian raised a hand. "No one leaves the estate until Harrow completes his investigation." Beatrice opened her palm and revealed the shipping tag. "The stolen grain is being held at a warehouse bearing this symbol. Harcourt's letter bears the same mark." Julian reached for it. She closed her fingers. "You have already surrendered my keys, my authority, and my reputation to Marcus. I will not surrender the only evidence still in my possession." A flush rose along Julian's neck. "I am the Duke of Ashcombe, and I am the woman you accused without proof." For several seconds neither moved. Then Marcus spoke softly. "If she refuses to cooperate, The magistrates should know. Beatrice faced him. They will. I intend to place this directly in Constable Harrow's hands. Julian ordered Harrow summoned to the granary. Until he arrived, Beatrice remained beside Clara while Reverend Cole examined the remaining shipping marks. Beneath the last empty storage bay, they found parallel grooves cut into the floor. The boards lifted, revealing a narrow loading channel leading beyond the granary wall. An old estate map showed that the channel joined a disused canal beneath the northern woods. Barges could have removed the grain without passing the main road. Marcus had recommended reopening that canal 6 months earlier. Julian had approved it without consulting Beatrice. The repairs were described as drainage work, she said. That is what Marcus told me. And you signed the payment. Julian looked toward his cousin, but Marcus had already left the doorway. Harrow, Julian shouted. They found Marcus near the stables, preparing to mount. He claimed he was going to search for the stolen evidence chest, yet no servant had been ordered to accompany him. Harrow took his horse and placed him under observation. You cannot seriously suspect me because of a canal and a warehouse mark, Marcus protested. No, Julian replied. I suspect you because you lied about Clara. It was a small admission, but Beatrice heard the cost of it. Marcus heard it too. By evening, the estate had become a guarded prison. Harrow searched the rooms assigned to Marcus, but found no ledger, gold, or correspondence linking him to Harcourt Trading Company. Beatrice was returned to the West Apartments. This time Julian followed her inside. On the writing desk, someone had placed a tray containing cold soup and untouched bread. Beatrice removed her wet cloak but did not invite him to sit. The Eastern farms will be seized because I signed that loan, Julian said. Yes. I believed it was necessary to purchase grain. You believed Marcus because he agreed with you, and you opposed every decision I made. I opposed the decisions that endangered the estate. Julian looked toward the ruined wardrobe and exposed panel. When did we begin speaking to each other as enemies? Beatrice remembered when the answer had been different. In the first years of their marriage, Julian had brought financial papers to her after dinner and listened while she explained them. He had once told a room of noblemen that Ashcombe survived because his wife understood figures better than any banker in London. Then Marcus returned from abroad and began mocking Julian for allowing a woman to control his estate. Julian's gratitude became embarrassment. Her competence became a challenge to his authority. We became enemies, she said, when you decided that trusting me made you appear weak. His face tightened. I can challenge the Harcourt loan, he said, but without the original records. My private notes show when the false payments began. Hope entered his eyes. Where are they? Safe. You must give them to me. No. Tomorrow I will take them to my father's former legal partner in London. You remain under investigation. Then send Harrow with me. I forbid you to leave. Beatrice met his gaze. You publicly destroyed my name. I will not wait in this room while the person responsible destroys the evidence needed to restore it. Julian moved closer. If you go to London alone, you may be arrested. Then perhaps you should have considered that before calling me a thief before the county. He had no answer. After Julian left, Mrs. Pembroke entered through the hidden passage. She carried Beatrice's notebook and a message received from the family solicitor, Mr. Samuel Hart. He had investigated the address printed on the Black Heron tag. Beatrice unfolded the note. Harcourt Trading Company had no registered owners, no permanent office, and no lawful authority to seize Ashcombe land. Its warehouse stood beside the Thames, leased under a false name. But one fact mattered more than all the others. A ship called the Mercy Jane was scheduled to depart from that warehouse at midnight the following evening, carrying 400 sacks of English wheat to France. Marcus was not merely hiding the grain. He was about to move it beyond the reach of English law. At the bottom of Hart's message was one final warning. The warehouse manager is listed as William Finch, Clara's brother. Beatrice did not wait for the night coach. Samuel Hart obtained 4 fresh horses, while Harrow sent the warehouse ledgers and William's testimony to the county magistrates by armed courier. The seized grain followed under river patrol guard. They reached the eastern farms shortly after sunrise. Marcus had already begun. Bailiffs stood outside Mary Ellison's cottage, while her furniture lay in the road. 2 neighboring families had been driven from their homes, and armed men guarded the remaining properties. Marcus watched from horseback, holding the forged receivership order. "Lady Ashcombe," he called, "or should I say the fugitive Duchess?" Beatrice stepped from the carriage carrying Hart's injunction. "The seizure is suspended pending an investigation into Harcourt Trading Company." Marcus did not even read it. "The county magistrates recognized my authority." "Authority obtained through a forged signature." Julian moved beside her. "I did not sign that order." The tenants fell silent. Until that moment, Julian had allowed the county to believe his wife acted alone. Marcus smiled. "You signed dozens of documents without reading them. Can you truly be certain?" The question struck its target. Julian's careless signatures had enabled the canal repairs, false grain purchases, and fraudulent loan. Beatrice took the receivership order and examined its wax. "This seal was made from the mold found in the London warehouse. According to your own witnesses." According to 2 Bow Street officers. Marcus's confidence faltered. Harrow's constables disarmed the bailiffs, but Marcus presented a second document, an arrest warrant for Beatrice, accusing her of arson, theft, and witness intimidation. It bore Magistrate Wycliffe's name. "You will not take her," Julian said. Harrow inspected the warrant. "This one appears lawful." Beatrice looked at Marcus. He did not need every official under his control. He needed only enough honest men to act upon manufactured evidence. "I will attend the hearing voluntarily," she said. "But the families remain in their homes." Marcus dismounted. "By tomorrow, the entire county will hear how desperately you tried to conceal your theft." "Good," Beatrice replied. "Then the entire county can hear my answer." A shout rose from the southern road. The first grain wagons had arrived from London. Mary Ellison ran toward them as workers opened the sacks and revealed clean wheat. More wagons followed, each bearing the black heron mark used by Harcourt. Marcus's face changed. The physical return of the grain could not be dismissed as Beatrice's invention. Reverend Cole climbed onto the lead wagon. "This was found in the company's warehouse. Every sack carries an Ashcombe storage number." The tenants turned toward Marcus. He backed toward his horse, but Harrow blocked him. "You are not under arrest yet," the constable said, "but you will remain under guard until the hearing." At the Guildhall that afternoon, Magistrate Wycliffe declared that Beatrice would face formal examination the following morning. Marcus would present the recovered evidence chest, while Beatrice could produce the London records and witnesses. Public disgrace would be answered publicly. As the hall emptied, a Bow Street officer arrived with news from the seized ship. During a second search of the Mercy Jane, his men had discovered a concealed compartment beneath the captain's cabin. Inside were 12 gold ingots, the exact value of the missing relief fund. Each one carried the Ashcombe lion. Julian's personal seal had been stamped directly into the stolen gold. Marcus immediately claimed Beatrice had used her access to the ducal study to market, but William shook his head. "The warehouse mold was made only 2 months ago," he said. "Those ingots were stamped before that." Beatrice examined a rubbing of the mark. The lion was perfect, but the small crown above it contained 6 points instead of 5, the same obsolete design once used by Julian's father. Only one original seal carried that mistake. It had been locked for 20 years inside the Ashcombe family chapel, and according to the estate register, Marcus's late mother had been the last person authorized to possess its key. Beatrice reached Clara before anyone else. The maid's face was bruised, her wrists raw beneath the ropes, and a strip of cloth had been tied so tightly across her mouth that blood marked its edge. Beatrice removed the gag, while Reverend Cole cut her bonds. Clara collapsed against her. "I did not steal your seal," she gasped. "I swear it." "I know." Marcus stepped into the granary. "That remains to be established." Clara recoiled at his voice. Beatrice felt the movement and looked directly at Marcus. "She is injured and terrified. You will remain outside. You possess no authority to order me anywhere." "But I do," Julian said. The words surprised them all. Marcus studied his cousin, then withdrew with a stiff bow. Julian crouched beside Clara. "Who brought you here?" "I never saw his face. He entered my room after midnight and covered my head. He said my brother owed money to a London gaming house. If I did not place the box behind her Grace's wardrobe, William would be arrested for fraud. Did you place it? Julian asked. Tears filled Clara's eyes. Yes. Julian looked at Beatrice. The confession supported part of his accusation, but not in the manner he expected. Someone had deliberately planted the evidence, yet Clara could not identify who had ordered it. The man gave me the box in the linen passage, she continued. When I finished, he struck me. I woke here with the seal around my neck. Beatrice examined the chain. It was not hers. Her seal normally hung from a narrow black ribbon, not brass links. Who knew about your brother's debt? She asked. Mr. Vale's secretary helped William find the gaming house. Marcus spoke from outside. I have employed 3 secretaries this year. That proves nothing. Julian rose and faced him. You told me the box was discovered after Clara confessed. She confessed by placing it. You said she came to you willingly. I may have misunderstood the servant who reported it. Beatrice watched Julian absorb the first undeniable lie Marcus had told him. It was not enough to restore his faith in her, but it was enough to disturb his faith in Marcus. Constable Harrow entered and ordered his men to search the granary. No grain remained except a handful scattered beneath the boards. The rear doors showed no sign of forced entry, meaning the missing sacks had been removed with a key Julian had just given to Marcus. Beatrice walked along the empty storage bays, counting drag marks across the dust. 400 sacks could not have vanished in one night. The grain had been removed gradually, perhaps over several weeks, while false totals remained in the official ledger. Near the rear wall, she found a broken shipping tag stamped with a black heron. She concealed it inside her glove before Marcus noticed. Julian approached her. Why did you leave your rooms? To honor the promise you made to the tenants. You disobeyed a direct order and discovered a kidnapped woman. His eyes moved to Clara, who was being carried toward the infirmary. I was wrong to believe she fled, he admitted, but not wrong to condemn me? The planted box does not explain your signatures or the missing money. It proves someone wanted you to find both. Julian lowered his voice. If you had shown me the respect owed to my position, perhaps I would have listened when you first raised your concerns. Beatrice stared at him. There it was, the true motive beneath his willing distrust. Julian had not rejected her warning because it lacked merit. He had rejected it because she questioned his judgment in front of Marcus. His wounded pride mattered more to him than her years of loyalty. You did not ask for respect, she said. You demanded obedience. Before Julian could respond, an estate clerk ran into the granary, carrying a sealed document. Your Grace, this arrived from London. Julian broke the seal and read. The color drained from his face. What is it? Beatrice asked. Marcus tried to take the letter, but Julian pulled it away. Beatrice read the heading over his arm. Harcourt Trading Company, Notice of Default. The missing relief fund was only a fraction of the danger. 3 months earlier, Julian had signed a loan secured against Ashcombe's eastern farms, believing the money would finance grain purchases. No grain had arrived, and the debt was now due. If payment is not made within 72 hours, Julian said, they will seize 30 tenant farms. Beatrice removed the broken tag from her glove. The black heron was printed above a London warehouse address. The same black heron appeared at the bottom of Harcourt's letter. Marcus moved toward her, but Beatrice closed her fist. She finally knew where the stolen grain had been taken. Then Reverend Cole entered with another message. Magistrate Wycliffe's carriage was attacked on the northern road, he said. The evidence chest is gone. By 10 the next morning, the Guildhall was fuller than it had been when Julian first accused his wife. The same magistrates occupied the raised table. The same tenants crowded the gallery. Beatrice stood again beneath the chandeliers, but this time no constable removed her keys. Marcus sat opposite her under guard. Magistrate Wycliffe opened the stolen evidence chest. Lord Vale maintains that the Duchess organized the theft, then manufactured evidence against him after her crime was discovered. Marcus rose. Every witness she presents depends upon her protection. Clara Finch serves her. William Finch faces prosecution. Her solicitor found the warehouse, and her husband now changes his testimony to preserve the Ashcombe name. Beatrice placed her private notebook beside the forged ledger. My observations began 6 weeks before I was accused. The paper was witnessed and dated by Mrs. Pembroke whenever I discovered an irregularity. The housekeeper confirmed every entry. Next came Clara, who described being forced to plant the box. William identified the false invoices, shipping records, and payments used to bribe estate clerks. Edwin Shaw's signed statement connected Marcus to the warehouse fire and the attack on the evidence carriage. Finally, the Bow Street officers brought in one of the recovered gold ingots. The Ashcombe lion gleamed beneath the six-pointed crown. Marcus remained composed. The seal belongs to the Duke's family. That implicates the Ashcombes, not me. Beatrice asked Reverend Cole to open the chapel register. Its final entry showed that Marcus's mother had borrowed the obsolete seal 20 years earlier to inventory charitable silver after the old Duke's death. The seal had supposedly been returned, but Samuel Hart produced testimony from the retired chapel keeper. He had seen Lady Vale give the seal to her son on the day she left Ashcombe. Marcus was 19. "You possess the only instrument capable of marking that gold," Beatrice said. "An old man's memory proves nothing. Then perhaps the gold itself will." An assayer testified that the ingots were cast from sovereigns withdrawn from 3 London banks. Each withdrawal corresponded exactly with a false payment recorded in Beatrice's name. The collecting agent had signed as Edwin Shaw. The chain was complete. Money removed through forged entries, converted into gold, stamped with the obsolete seal, and hidden aboard the ship carrying the stolen grain. Marcus's calm expression finally cracked. Beatrice continued, "You intended the gold to be found after Harcourt seized the farms. The Ashcombe mark and the initials J.A. would implicate Julian. He would face scandal or prosecution, leaving you to purchase the estate's distressed debts through intermediaries. You cannot prove my motive. You owed £43,000. Hart placed the creditor notices before the magistrates. Marcus's debts had been concealed for years. Seizing the eastern farms and selling their timber would have paid them. Destroying Beatrice was necessary because she understood the accounts well enough to detect the scheme. Julian rose before Wycliffe could speak. "I gave Marcus access to the estate," he said. "I approved the canal work, signed the Harcourt loan without proper examination, and ignored my wife when she warned me." Beatrice looked at him. He faced the tenants rather than the magistrates. "I accused the Duchess of Ashcombe publicly because her competence wounded my pride. I treated disagreement as disobedience and loyalty as ambition. The evidence against her succeeded because I wanted to believe a man who flattered me, instead of the woman who had protected this estate for 7 years." The Guildhall remained silent. Julian removed his ducal signet and placed it on the table. "She did not steal from you. I failed her, and in doing so, I failed every family who depended upon my judgment. It was the public truth Beatrice had been owed from the beginning, yet it could not restore what his accusation had destroyed between them." Harrow moved to arrest Marcus. "Wait," Marcus said. He drew a sealed document from inside his waistcoat. Harrow seized it before he could tear it. The letter authorized Marcus to establish Harcourt Trading Company, borrow against the eastern farms, and move grain through the restored canal. Unlike the other documents, it bore Julian's genuine 5-pointed seal. Julian read the letter and went pale. "The signature is mine." The gallery erupted. Marcus smiled. "Your Duke authorized everything. If I am guilty, so is he." Beatrice examined the page. The signature was genuine, the seal authentic, and the wording broad enough to make the entire operation appear lawful. Then she saw the date. The letter had supposedly been signed on the 17th of May, the same day Julian lay unconscious after a riding accident. Only 3 people had entered his room that night: Beatrice, the physician, and Marcus. Clara read her brother's name twice before her injured hands began to shake. "William is not a criminal," she whispered. "He worked as a bookkeeper until his employer dismissed him." "Marcus's secretary found him new employment," Beatrice said, "at a company created to steal from Ashcombe." Julian stood near the fireplace, having entered when Mrs. Pembroke delivered Hart's message. This time, he did not demand Beatrice surrender it. "We leave for London within the hour," he said. Beatrice folded the letter. "I am going with Harrow. You will not reach that warehouse safely without my name and authority. Your name did not protect me in the Guildhall. No," his voice lowered. I used it against you." It was the closest he had come to admitting the magnitude of his betrayal, but Beatrice refused to mistake recognition for repair. "Then use it now to obtain a warrant." Julian sent Harrow to the magistrate while Beatrice changed into a plain traveling dress. Clara insisted on accompanying them, convinced William would speak only if he saw his sister alive. Before their departure, Harrow discovered Marcus's guarded room empty. A rope made from bed linens hung from the window, and one stable horse was missing. On his desk lay a half-burned list of payments bearing the initials of 2 estate clerks and a customs officer in London. Julian stared at the abandoned room. I handed him the treasury keys. "And ignored every warning I gave you," Beatrice replied. He did not defend himself. They traveled through the night, reaching London the following afternoon. Samuel Hart met them near the Thames with 2 Bow Street officers and a warrant to search the Black Heron warehouse. The riverfront building appeared deserted, but fresh wagon tracks crossed the muddy yard. Through a broken window, Beatrice saw hundreds of grain sacks stacked beneath cargo nets. Her promise to the tenants could still be kept. The officers forced open the side door. Inside, laborers fled between the crates, while Harrow's men secured the exits. The Mercy Jane waited at the dock, its crew preparing to load the first sacks. "Stop that ship," Julian ordered. As the officers moved toward the quay, Clara called her brother's name. A thin young man emerged from behind the warehouse office. William Finch had a bruised cheek and an iron chain fastened around one ankle. "Clara?" She ran to him. William embraced her, then saw Beatrice and lowered his head. "Your Grace, I signed the shipping records. They told me my sister would be imprisoned if I refused." "Who gave the orders?" Harrow asked. "Lord Marcus, but Harcourt belongs to someone else." Before William could name that person, a shot shattered the office window. Julian pulled Beatrice behind a stack of crates while the officers drew their pistols. The gunman disappeared among the roof beams. Harrow chased him toward the rear stairs. Beatrice entered the office and found ledgers spread across the desk. One recorded the sale of Ashcombe grain. Another listed payments to the clerks who had forged her handwriting. Beneath them lay a mold of Julian's ducal seal and several blocks of blue wax. She touched one. Cloves. This was the workshop where the evidence against her had been manufactured. William unlocked a cabinet and removed a packet of original invoices. "These prove the grain was never sold by you. Lord Marcus ordered me to preserve them until the farms were seized." "Why would he preserve evidence that could condemn him?" Julian asked. "Because the farms were not his final target." William produced a second agreement. It stated that after Harcourt seized the eastern land, the company would transfer it to an unnamed purchaser for £1. Only the purchaser's initials appeared. J.A. Julian Ashcombe. Beatrice looked at her husband. "He intended to make it appear that you stole your own tenants' farms." A heavy beam crashed across the warehouse entrance. Smoke curled beneath the roof. The gunman had not been trying to kill them. He had been buying time to spread oil along the walls. Flames raced across the timber, cutting them off from the officers and the river. Above the roar of the fire, the Mercy Jane's departure bell began to ring. The stolen grain was moving toward the ship, and Beatrice, Julian, Clara, and William were locked inside the burning warehouse. Flames climbed the warehouse walls while smoke swallowed the rafters. Julian threw his shoulder against the blocked entrance, but the fallen beam did not move. Clara helped William toward the office window, only to find iron bars fixed outside. "The loading channel," Beatrice said. She had noticed its record in the shipping ledger, a lower passage connecting the warehouse floor directly to the river. William pointed beneath the grain platform. "There is a hatch, but it is locked." Beatrice seized the ring of warehouse keys from his desk. Julian attempted to lead, but she stopped him. "You carry the invoices. If we lose those, Marcus wins." He obeyed without argument. Beatrice crawled beneath the platform as burning fragments fell around her. The third key opened the hatch, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. River water had already covered the lowest steps. She sent Clara and William first. Julian followed with the documents inside his coat, but when Beatrice turned to descend, a burning support crashed between them. "Beatrice?" Heat struck her face. The ledgers lay on the other side of the flames. They contained the names of every clerk, creditor, and official involved in the scheme. Without them, Marcus could dismiss William's testimony as the lie of a frightened accomplice. Beatrice wrapped her hands in her skirt, crossed the burning floor, and dragged both books against her chest. The roof groaned. Julian climbed back through the hatch and pulled her down as the platform collapsed above them. They waded through the flooded passage and emerged beneath the quay. Harrow's men hauled them into a patrol boat moments before the warehouse roof fell. The Mercy Jane was already moving into the Thames. "Those sacks belong to starving tenants," Beatrice shouted. A Bow Street officer signaled the river patrol. 2 cutters surrounded the ship before it reached the next bend. Its captain surrendered after the officers produced the warrant. Most of the grain had been saved. Onshore, Harrow brought forward the captured gunman. Beatrice recognized him as Edwin Shaw, Marcus's secretary, the same man who had arranged William's employment. Inside Shaw's pocket, they found payment receipts, a pistol, and a letter instructing him to burn the warehouse. The letter bore Marcus's signature. Julian read it in silence. "You believed him instead of me," Beatrice said, "even when every decision he proposed benefited him." "I know. You knew I had never stolen so much as a penny from Ashcombe. I allowed my pride to make your loyalty look like defiance." It was the truth, but it came only after the consequences could no longer be ignored. Harrow interrupted them. "Shaw says Lord Marcus is not fleeing England. He returned to Ashcombe." William turned pale. "Then he is going to the Eastern Farms." A rider arrived from Samuel Hart's office carrying an urgent telegram. Julian tore it open. Marcus had appeared before the county magistrates with the stolen evidence chest. He claimed Beatrice had burned the London warehouse to destroy proof of her guilt. More dangerously, he carried a document appointing him legal receiver of the Eastern Farms. Julian examined the signature at its bottom. It was his own. "I never signed this," he said. Beatrice looked at the date. The eviction would begin at sunrise. Marcus now possessed the authority to drive 30 families from their homes, and the county still believed Beatrice had stolen the money meant to save them. Julian's gaze settled on the severed edge of Marcus's cuff. For the first time since the hearing began, certainty deserted his face. Marcus calmly raised his arm. "This tore yesterday while I was crossing the southern hedge. My valet can confirm it." "Then you will not object to Constable Harrow comparing the fabric," Beatrice said. Marcus smiled without warmth. "Of course not. I have nothing to conceal." He removed his coat and handed it over. Harrow placed the torn strip against the cuff. The color appeared identical, but the cloth in the driver's hand was coarse wool, while Marcus's coat was made from fine, superfine broadcloth. "Not a match," Harrow concluded. Marcus looked at Beatrice. Disappointed? Beatrice ignored him and knelt beside the injured driver. She recognized Thomas Reed, who had delivered supplies for the estate for nearly 20 years. A deep wound marked the back of his head, and his breathing was dangerously shallow. "Who found him?" she asked. "One of my men," Harrow answered. "Was anything moved?" "No." Beatrice examined Thomas's clenched hand. The blue fabric contained a line of pale stitching, and a brass thread caught along one edge. "It came from a servant's livery," she said, "not a gentleman's coat." Marcus shrugged. "Then perhaps one of her servants helped arrange the exchange." Julian's expression hardened again. Beatrice rose. "Every male servant at Ashcombe Hall wears green." "But your family's former livery was blue," Marcus replied. "Was it not?" The implication was carefully placed. Beatrice's father had died 5 years earlier, and several of his servants had entered her household. Marcus was suggesting that she had used one of them to attack Thomas. "You seem remarkably well informed about the cloth," she said. "I pay attention when a man is nearly murdered." "No. You pay attention when blame can be redirected." Julian stepped between them. "Enough." He ordered Thomas taken to the estate infirmary under guard. The wagon would remain at the bridge until the magistrates examined it, and Harrow would collect every blue livery coat in the district. Marcus's confidence had returned by the time they reached Ashcombe Hall. Servants lined the entrance in silence as Beatrice stepped from the carriage. Mrs. Pembroke, the housekeeper, attempted to approach her, but Julian's new instructions had already spread. "Her Grace is to remain in the West Apartments," Harrow announced. "No letters, visitors, or access to estate records without His Grace's permission." Mrs. Pembroke looked toward Julian. "Your Grace? The Duchess has managed this household since before half these servants arrived. She is not being condemned, Julian said. She is being confined while the evidence is examined. Beatrice removed her wet gloves. A distinction you might have considered before condemning me in the Guildhall. Pain flashed across Julian's face and vanished. Marcus entered behind them, wearing a borrowed coat. The treasury keys should be transferred immediately. Julian took the silver ring from Harrow and placed it in Marcus's hand. Beatrice watched without speaking. It was not merely a legal precaution. Julian was choosing Marcus again, even after the exchanged wagon had been traced to property under his control. 7 years of trust had been replaced by a cousin's flattering obedience. Beatrice climbed the west staircase under guard. Inside her rooms, drawers had been emptied, gowns cut open at the seams, and books scattered across the carpet. The false panel behind her wardrobe stood exposed. She examined its hinges. Fresh scratches marked the brass, but a gray layer of dust remained unbroken along the inner frame. The panel had not been opened from inside her room. Someone had removed the section of wall from the adjoining linen passage, placed the wooden box inside, and then replaced it. Beatrice crossed to the fireplace and pulled the bell cord. No servant came. She waited until the guard outside changed, then opened the small door connecting her bedchamber to the dressing room. Beneath a loose floorboard lay a narrow notebook wrapped in oilcloth. It was not an official ledger. It contained the private observations she made whenever an entry seemed suspicious: shipment dates, unusual prices, missing receipts, and names she did not yet trust. 6 weeks earlier, Beatrice had written one repeated name beside 3 grain payments: Harcourt Trading Company. The business carried her mother's family name, but Beatrice had never heard of it before it appeared in the accounts. When she asked Julian to delay payment, he refused because Marcus had personally guaranteed the supplier. Now the forged letter connected her to the same company. A soft knock sounded against the dressing room wall. 3 taps, a pause, then 2 more. Mrs. Pembroke's signal. Beatrice pressed the panel beside the mirror, opening a narrow servant's passage. The housekeeper slipped through, carrying a candle and a folded sheet of paper. "I found this beneath Clara's mattress," she whispered. "Did she truly flee? No carriage left the estate before dawn, no horses missing, and the gatekeeper never saw her." Beatrice unfolded the paper. It was a list of payments in Clara's handwriting. Each amount was followed by a date and a single initial, M. The final line contained no amount. Only a warning: if I refuse to place the box, he will send my brother to prison. "Clara did not betray me willingly," Beatrice said. Mrs. Pembroke glanced toward the passage. "There is something else. Lord Marcus ordered the northern granary locked before the hearing. Reverend Cole has arrived to inspect it, but Marcus claims the key is missing. My keys are now in his possession. Not all of them." The housekeeper produced a small iron key. Beatrice had given it to her during the failed harvest in case supplies were ever needed at night. Leaving the notebook hidden beneath the floorboard, Beatrice followed Mrs. Pembroke through the passage. They descended a narrow staircase, crossed the laundry court, and reached the granary unseen. Reverend Cole and 2 village representatives waited outside. Julian was arguing with Marcus near the locked door. Beatrice stepped from the shadows and handed Cole the key. Julian stared at her. "You were ordered to remain upstairs." "And you promised the tenants an inspection." Marcus moved to block the door. Opening it before the magistrates arrive could contaminate evidence. "The grain is not evidence," Beatrice replied. "It is food." Julian hesitated, then nodded to Reverend Cole. The key turned. When the heavy doors opened, everyone fell silent. The granary should have contained 400 sacks of wheat. Instead, it was almost empty. At its center stood Clara Finch, bound to a wooden chair. Around her neck hung Beatrice's missing ducal seal, and behind her, written across the wall in fresh red paint, were the words, "The Duchess sold it all." Marcus's smile widened as the Guildhall erupted. Beatrice did not look at him. She examined the disputed authorization beneath the nearest chandelier. The signature was Julian's. So was the 5-pointed seal. Yet the letters above his name had been written with a sharper nib, and the final line curved awkwardly around the signature, instead of ending naturally before it. "Did Marcus ever ask you to sign an incomplete document?" she asked. Julian's silence answered before he spoke. 3 blank authorizations, he admitted. During the spring grain emergency, he said suppliers required immediate proof that he acted with my permission. The tenants reacted with angry disbelief. And you signed them without reading their final terms? Wycliffe asked. Yes. Marcus spread his hands. Then the Duke authorized me. His failure to remember the wording is not forgery. Beatrice placed the document beside Julian's genuine letter to the county bank. The signature is authentic because Julian signed an empty sheet. The authorization was added later. You cannot prove that, Marcus said. I can. She asked Samuel Hart to hold both pages toward the light. A faint watermark appeared in the disputed document, a crown above the number 18. Hart explained that the paper had been manufactured for the government stationery contract and released for private sale in August. The document claimed to have been completed in May. Marcus's face lost all color. That paper did not exist on the date written here, Beatrice said. You kept Julian's signed sheet until August, added the Harcourt authorization, and backdated it to the night of his accident because you believed his memory of that day could be questioned. The physician confirmed that Julian had remained unconscious from the afternoon of May 17th until the following morning. Marcus had visited the bedchamber twice, claiming he needed the ducal seal to reassure creditors. Julian's valet then testified that Marcus had removed a leather dispatch case from the room. Inside it had been Julian's current seal and the signed blank sheets. The letter proves my husband's negligence, Beatrice said, but it also proves your fraud. Marcus lunged across the table for the document. Harrow caught him before he reached it. The struggle tore open Marcus's waistcoat, and a small iron key fell onto the floor. Reverend Cole picked it up. It bore the number of the locked cabinet inside the Ashcombe chapel. The constables searched that cabinet before the hearing ended. Inside they found the obsolete 6-pointed seal, clove-scented blue wax, and Lady Vale's original letter entrusting the seal to her son. More importantly, they discovered Marcus's private account book. Every stage of his scheme appeared within it. After Beatrice refused to conceal his shipping debts, Marcus created Harcourt Trading Company under a false name. He bribed 2 estate clerks to copy her handwriting and remove grain gradually through the canal Julian had authorized. Edwin Shaw converted the stolen relief money into gold. Marcus marked the ingots with the obsolete Ashcombe seal, so they could later be used to implicate Julian. Clara was coerced into planting the money box. Thomas Reed was attacked when he realized the relief wagon had been exchanged. The empty granary, forged transfers, false receivership order, attack on Wycliffe's carriage, and warehouse fire had all served one purpose: destroy Beatrice's credibility before she exposed the accounts. Marcus intended to seize the eastern farms through Harcourt, sell their timber, and pay his creditors. Afterward, he would reveal the gold-carrying Julian's seal and threaten the Duke with prosecution unless Julian surrendered further Ashcombe property. He had nearly succeeded because Julian repeatedly gave him the access Beatrice advised against. Magistrate Wycliffe ordered Marcus held for fraud, theft, conspiracy, kidnapping, arson, and attempted murder. Edwin Shaw and the bribed clerks would stand trial as accomplices. William and Clara Finch received protection in exchange for their testimony, while the charges against Beatrice were formally dismissed. But Beatrice remained standing. Dismissal is insufficient, she said. My name was destroyed before this county. Its restoration will occur before the same witnesses. Wycliffe rose. The court finds that Beatrice Ashcombe neither stole nor misused the relief fund. Her records, judgment, and actions preserved the estate's grain, prevented unlawful evictions, and exposed a criminal conspiracy. Every allegation made against her is withdrawn. Julian faced the gallery once more. My wife warned me, and I chose not to listen. I removed her keys, denied her access to evidence, confined her, and gave authority to the man who framed her. Marcus deceived me, but he did not force me to humiliate her. That choice was mine. No one applauded. Beatrice was grateful for that. Truth was not a performance, and remorse was not absolution. Over the following weeks, the stolen gold repaid the relief fund. The recovered grain was distributed among the villages under Reverend Cole's supervision. The Harcourt loan and receivership order were declared fraudulent, allowing every Eastern family to remain on its farm. Julian sold 2 properties belonging solely to him to cover the destroyed warehouse, injured workers' compensation, and losses caused by his negligence. He dismissed the officials Marcus had installed and created an independent tenants' council with authority to inspect every estate account. He also restored Beatrice's marriage settlement in full. Her separate inheritance, which he had once treated as a resource available to Ashcombe, was placed in an irrevocable trust beyond his control. The Western Dower House and its surrounding land were legally assigned for her independent use. He returned every piece of jewelry she had sold to rescue the estate, repurchasing them with his personal funds. None of it purchased forgiveness. On the morning Beatrice left Ashcombe Hall, the servants gathered in the entrance. Clara stood beside Mrs. Pembroke, no longer trembling. William had accepted work with Samuel Hart, auditing charitable trusts where false accounts could not easily hide. Julian waited near the door. In his hands lay the silver keyring Constable Harrow had cut from Beatrice's waist at the Guildhall. "I had the silk repaired," he said. Beatrice accepted the ring. The keys to the granary, office, and treasury remained upon it. "I no longer need these. You earned the right to control them. That was never the question." She removed the 3 estate keys and placed them in Julian's palm. "The question was whether you respected me when my judgment contradicted yours." He closed his hand around them. "I did not." Beatrice kept only 2 keys, one to the Western Dower House and another to the new county relief office she would direct with funds recovered from Marcus's property. Julian looked toward the waiting carriage. "Is there any possibility that, in time, you might return?" "I do not know." She would not reward regret with a promise. If he changed, he would do so without certainty of receiving her again. "I will not ask you to wait for me," Julian said, "nor will I interfere with whatever life you choose." For the first time, he offered her something without attempting to govern her answer. Beatrice stepped outside. Months earlier, she had entered the Guildhall while a constable cut away every key that represented her authority. Now she crossed the Ashcombe courtyard, carrying only the keys she had freely chosen. At the carriage, Mary Ellison waited with her daughter and a small loaf baked from the recovered wheat. "This belongs to you," Mary said. Beatrice broke the loaf in half and returned one portion to the child. "No," she replied, "it belongs to all of us." She entered the carriage. Clara closed the door, and the horses moved toward the western road. Beatrice did not look back at the title, the treasury, or the husband who had doubted her. She looked ahead, placed the 2 remaining keys beside her on the seat, and opened the new relief ledger to its first clean page. The first stone struck the Guildhall window before Julian could answer. Glass cracked above the magistrate's table. Several women screamed, and the clerks ducked behind their chairs. Outside, the tenants surged across the square, their voices merging into a single furious roar. "Thief! Give us back the grain! Bring out the Duchess!" Constable Harrow ordered his men to bar the doors, but Beatrice moved toward them. "Let me speak to them." Julian caught her arm. "You will remain here. If you hide me, they will believe I am guilty." "They already believe it." The cruelty of the reply appeared to surprise even Julian. His grip loosened, but he did not apologize. Marcus approached the cracked window. "The militia should be summoned." "No," Beatrice said. "These people are hungry, not armed rebels." A stone nearly struck a magistrate, and soldiers firing into the crowd will not restore the missing grain. Marcus turned to Julian. "You see, even now, she protects those threatening your authority." Julian looked between them, uncertainty briefly disturbing his rigid expression. Years earlier, during a dispute over grazing rights, Beatrice had calmed 200 tenants without a single arrest. He knew she could control the crowd, but trusting her now would undermine the accusation he had made before the county. Another stone shattered the lower window. Julian released her. "You have 5 minutes." Constable Harrow opened one door just wide enough for Beatrice to pass. Cold rain struck her face as she stepped onto the Guildhall stairs. The square fell gradually silent. Men and women stood soaked beneath the dark sky. Some carried empty grain sacks. Others held children wrapped in blankets. At the front was Mary Ellison, whose husband had died repairing one of Julian's barns. Her youngest daughter clung to her skirt. "You promised us flour by Sunday," Mary called, "and I meant to keep that promise. They found your money. They found money in my room. That is not the same thing." Angry muttering spread through the crowd. Beatrice raised her voice. "Someone filled the relief wagon with gravel because they wanted you looking at me instead of asking where the grain truly went." "Then where is it?" a miller demanded. "I do not yet know." A muddy turnip struck the stone near her feet. Behind her, Julian stepped into the doorway, but Beatrice lifted one hand to stop him. His face hardened at being commanded before his tenants, yet he remained where he was. "You have every right to be angry," Beatrice continued, "but if you break these doors, the ledgers inside may be destroyed. Those records are the only path to your money." "Your husband says you wrote them," Mary replied. Beatrice turned slightly, forcing Julian to meet her eyes before the entire square. "My husband has decided what he believes. I am asking you to wait until the evidence decides what is true." The challenge landed exactly where she intended. Julian's shoulders stiffened. Beatrice faced the tenants again. "Give me 48 hours. Reverend Cole will inspect every remaining food store, accompanied by 2 representatives chosen from your villages. Nothing will be moved without their approval." Reverend Cole came to the doorway. "I agree." "You no longer possess authority over the stores," Marcus called from inside. The crowd erupted again. Julian's pride had trapped him. If he rejected Beatrice's proposal, the tenants would blame him for hiding the reserves. If he accepted it, he would be following the judgment of the wife he had just disgraced. After a long silence, he said, "The inspections will proceed." Marcus's expression tightened. Beatrice saw it. Mary Ellison slowly lowered her empty sack. 48 hours. The words passed through the crowd until the tenants began retreating from the steps. They did not forgive Beatrice, but they allowed the magistrates to leave without bloodshed. When she returned inside, Julian closed the door behind her. "You made me appear weak. I prevented a riot. You publicly implied that my judgment cannot be trusted. I stated the truth. You reached your verdict before hearing my defense." Marcus interrupted before Julian could respond. "The Duchess should be taken back to Ashcombe Hall. Every hour she remains free gives her another opportunity to alter the evidence." Beatrice glanced at the blue ledger. "Then place the evidence under the magistrate's protection." Julian moved the book away from her. "It belongs to the estate." "It concerns a criminal inquiry." His hesitation told her everything. He wanted control of the investigation because part of him feared what an independent examiner might discover. Beatrice lowered her voice. "If you are certain I stole the money, you should have nothing to fear." Julian summoned Magistrate Wycliffe and reluctantly placed the ledger, letters, and wooden box in his custody. Beatrice watched each item sealed inside a larger evidence chest. The clove-scented envelope remained intact. For now, Constable Harrow escorted her to a closed carriage. Julian and Marcus followed on horseback as they traveled toward Ashcombe Hall. The overturned relief wagon remained beside Millstone Bridge. Gravel glittered across the wet road while hungry villagers searched the ditches for any grain that might have survived. Beatrice leaned toward the window. The wagon's rear axle was newly painted red. Ashcombe relief wagons were marked in green. "Stop the carriage." The constable ignored her. "That is not our wagon," she insisted. Julian rode closer. "What are you saying?" "Our carts have iron-rimmed wheels manufactured in Derby. That one has wooden rims and a narrower frame. Someone exchanged the entire wagon before it reached the bridge." Marcus guided his horse between Julian and the wreckage. "Or the Duchess arranged the exchange herself." Beatrice looked at Julian. "Examine the delivery seal beneath the driver's bench." Julian dismounted. After a moment's hesitation, he crouched beside the wagon and scraped mud from the wood. A burned mark appeared. 2 crossed anchors beneath the letters M.V. Marcus Vale. Marcus stared at it for only a second before laughing. "The wagon was stolen from one of my old shipping warehouses." "Which means the exchange involved property under your control," Beatrice said. "It means she selected a wagon that could be traced to me." Julian stood slowly, caught between the wife he no longer trusted and the cousin he had just placed in charge of his treasury. A shout came from the bridge. One of Harrow's men had found the driver face down beneath the bank. He was alive, but blood covered the back of his coat. Clenched in his fist was a torn strip of dark blue fabric. Marcus wore a dark blue riding coat, but when Beatrice looked at him, she saw that one cuff had been freshly cut.